Hello there, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back. Boy, oh boy, Intel has pressed the reset button on their core processors. So they just officially announced the Arrow Lake processor series named Core Ultra 200S. In other words, the Core series family of processors has reached the end of the line. It's finished. So we don't have the Core i5, i7 and i9, none of that cheesy crap anymore. Now it's the Core Ultra 5, the Ultra 7 and the Ultra 9. So what was previously being made for laptops is now being brought upon unsuspecting desktop users. So I saw Intel's media briefing, and according to them, Arrow Lake is one small step for Intel and a giant leap for AI desktop computing. Take a listen to this.
Arrow represents a reset on our desktop roadmap to give us significant thermal and electrical runway headed into the future. That's performance headroom that we can grow into with future architectures, and that's one of the reasons why we've been on such a quest to re-architect these cores.
Okay, and while they were pressing the reset button, they also seem to have pressed the delete button on the Series 3 processors, because this current release that they have has no Ultra 3 on the list of processors that they've launched. So there are two Ultra 5s, two Ultra 7s, with the difference obviously being the integrated graphics as usual. And then there's the flagship Ultra 9 285K, which was actually the focal point of Intel's presentation. Now, these new Arrow Lake processors are going on sale on the 24th of this month. So after the 13th and 14th gen debacle that Intel had, what's inside these processors, right? Let's find out. So according to Intel, their top priorities for the Arrow Lake program was to basically bring down the power consumption by about 40%. That's what they have on the slide here. To increase, because they've brought down the power consumption, to keep the multi-core performance high, and then to improve the thermal efficiency, which is to have lower CPU temperatures while maintaining performance, and then overhauling the built-in graphics to offer support for modern codecs like Sony's 8K XAVC and so on. So the other things they prioritized in Arrow Lake was kind of modernizing connectivity, which we'll go into, and then there was AI this, AI that, AI future. Okay, so we'll go into that as well. So let's look at these features in detail and try to answer the most simple and important question. Looking at this, should I upgrade? All right, so there are 5 major differences from the 14th gen. Number one, let's look at the specs. So if you see here, so there's 14 cores, 6 performance cores and 8 efficiency cores on the Ultra 5, all the way up to the Ultra 9, which has 8 performance cores and 16 efficiency cores. So the Ultra 5 base power is at 125 watts and it goes all the way to 159 watts. The Ultra 7, both the SKUs have a base power of 125 watts and they go up to 250. And the Ultra 9 has also a base power of 125 watts and the max power of 250. So Intel says that, I mean, we're still looking at specs, okay? So Intel says their new Lion Cove P cores on the Arrow Lake have a 9% IPC uplift over the Raptor Cove in the 14th gen CPUs. And then the Skymount E cores has a geo-mean of 32% IPC uplift in integer calculations and up to 72% IPC uplift in floating point operations. And when it comes to the multi-thread operations, there's over 30% IPC uplift on the multi-thread integer operations, about 55% on the multi-thread floating point operations. The most important difference that you'll notice on this is that there's no more hyper-threading. It's gone. They've taken it out. So now the thread count is the same as the core count. So how does this affect performance? We are yet to see that in the real world. However,
And though we've reduced the 32 threads from the 32 threads in Raptor Lake to 24 threads in Arrow Lake, we still come out ahead in multi-threaded performance, both generationally and competitively.
according to Intel, it performs 8% faster in single core tests versus the 4900K and 4% faster versus the Zen 5 AMD 9950X. Now, the multi-core performance, okay, is 15% faster than the outgoing 4900K and 13% faster. Again, these are geo-mean, okay, across all of these workloads here. So it's 13% faster than the AMD Ryzen 9 9950X, despite having lower thread count and no hyperthreading. Okay, let's go to gaming. Okay, so that's really what we're interested in, right? So according to Intel's charts, at 1080p, the Ultra 9 285K seems to be doing better at games that need more CPU compute, which means that typical multiplayer games like Warzone, for example, or Valorant should see a performance uplift. Again, this is an inference based on their tests, and obviously still has to be tested in the real world. The fourth major difference here is reduced power consumption compared to 14th gen processors, and there are two significant changes here. For lightly threaded workloads, again, Intel says all of this. So for lightly threaded workloads, such as the one you can see on the screen here, Intel has dropped power consumption by 58% from the 4900K, and this remains to be seen how other processors perform in this metric against their previous gen counterparts. I mean, Ultra 5 versus i5, and then the Ultra 7 versus the i7. Now, this is Intel's Cinebench multi-core benchmark results, where it shows the Arrow Lake Ultra 9 285K part at 125 watts, putting out the same score as the 4900K at 250 watts. Honestly, this is an insane level of performance per watt, but this is basically only for Cinebench. And I'm personally interested in seeing real world test results of these. Okay, Intel's Arrow Lake apparently has similar performance to the 4900K, as you can see on this chart, with significant lower power consumption. And if you look at this, it seems that games that are CPU bound, like we saw before, or require higher CPU compute, are performing better than the 4900K and at less power. Okay, but this remains to be seen, because these guys have like 12, 13 titles that they've tested. I'm pretty sure when channels like Gamers Nexus or Hardware Unboxed get their hands on these processors, they're probably going to put in other games to test the same thing. So overall, the Ultra 9 285K flagship has almost the same frame rates as the 4900K, with overall system power being brought down by 70 to 80 watts. What I found interesting was this slide, okay? Because in these tests, Intel is saying that the 250PL1, which is their default sustained power limit, when brought down to 175 or 125 watts, provides the same gaming performance when tuned for compact gaming PCs. Now, this was their test across 7 titles that you can see on the screen here. This is on the Ultra 9 285K, so it remains to be seen for the Ultra 5 and Ultra 7 processors. But what they have here is quite insane. And now this looks like there's a lot of headroom when people start overclocking these processors. I'm actually quite interested in seeing how these are going to perform. All right, so let's go to the next major difference, which is an average CPU temperature reduction of about 13 degrees centigrade when they ran gaming tests at 1080p with a 360mm AIO. These are their tests, by the way. Okay, now this brings up the question: does a new gen mean more performance with more power consumption, or does it mean it can be more power efficient while delivering the same performance? Right? This is something that we'll have to ask ourselves. All right, so coming to the next major difference is the addition of NPUs, or neural processing units, for AI workloads across all the processor SKUs. So the Ultra 5 to Ultra 9, all of them have NPUs, same level of performance. And for creators, this is where it gets interesting.
Over the past year, we've also seen content creation and commercial use cases for AI explode onto the scene in a huge way.
Most applications today have some level of AI, integrated to perform things like transcription, object detection, speech enhancement, music separation, and more. And I mean, for streamers, stuff like background removal and noise suppression, all of these, motion tracking and so on, these things are stuff which use AI extensively, and they run extremely well on NPUs.
But ZG, people already have GPUs for AI workloads. Why would anyone pay for a lower performance NPU?
Now, an NPU is great at short and repetitive tasks like facial recognition, voice recognition, natural language processing, and so on. All of these tasks I mentioned previously are inference-based tasks which require matrix-based calculations, and most of these AI features on creator tools are purely inference-based, right? And these benefit greatly from the lower latency and high parallel compute capabilities that NPUs bring, and these perform much better than discrete GPUs. So applications like, for example, DaVinci Resolve or Premiere Pro or Photoshop, these benefit greatly from an NPU. And if you want to learn more about this, I'm going to leave a link in the description which explains the differences between the NPU and the GPU, so you can go into more detail and nerd out if you'd like. Now, for these type of workloads, right, the flagship Ultra 9 285K, according to Intel, seems to outperform the Ryzen 9 9950X by a significant margin. There's 50% faster AI performance, at least on the Adobe After Effects software, versus the 9950X. All right, now the final major difference is that Arrow Lake once again requires a new platform. These new CPUs are based on the LGA 1851 socket, and these require the new 800 series chipset motherboards to run these CPUs, and I'm pretty sure these won't come in cheap. Now these 800 series chipsets, right, they bring in 20x PCIe 5.0 lanes and then 48 PCI Express lanes. There's also a support for about 10 USB 3.2 and 14 USB 2.0, and there's up to 8 SATA 3.0. I don't know how manufacturers are going to make these motherboards, but it'll be interesting to see how they cram all of this in, or how many USB ports really can we see on these motherboards. Again, for creators, this is something that's going to be very useful. Now, coming to connectivity, this is where you'll see that there's support for Thunderbolt 4 and Thunderbolt 5 and Thunderbolt Share. And then there's Wi-Fi 6E built in, and then Wi-Fi 7. And there's Bluetooth 5.3 low energy, and then Bluetooth 5.4 low energy. And then there's 1 GB Ethernet and 2.5 GB Ethernet from Killer. And the other important thing is Arrow Lake now supports DDR5 6400 JEDEC specifications with OC support for 8000 megahertz. And I heard them say that it also goes up to 10,000, but that remains to be seen. Now, the other major difference is more control over overclocking. So some new features include, for example, granular overclocking, as you can see on the slide here. Now the 16.67 megahertz step is for a single P core and for a group of 4 E cores. There's independent base clocks for the compute tile, which houses the P and E cores, and the SoC tile, which houses the NPUs and system controllers, which basically helps allow what system is failing to go back to settings that actually work to keep that system stable at that clock, which is quite good. Now then there's also the fabric overclock, which helps increase the speed of communications, which means that if you're overclocking memory, you can choose to overclock the SoC and then the memory controller to remove any bottleneck. Now there's also the independent P and E overclock, where we can now have a separate voltage per P core and per group of 4 E cores. And then for these extreme overclockers, you know, who have liquid nitrogen and stuff lying around, you know, for people who want these processor frequencies to like touch the moon, these guys have a DLVR bypass, which allows them to go over and above the recommended operating voltages. Now, all of these overclocking features, they are accessible via their new extreme overclocking software. Intel, however, said that regular overclockers must pay more attention to the E-core overclock, since apparently there's a 400 to 500 megahertz headroom, and that's going to be really interesting.
Now, to provide some guidance on where to focus overclocking efforts in Arrow Lake, we think you'll get the most bang for your buck by focusing on E-core frequency, tile-to-tile frequency, and memory frequency. There's some headroom on the P cores, but our design does try to maximize frequency out of the box on these cores.
All right, so for the most important thing, let's look at pricing.
And all you can talk about is money.
For comparison, you can see the prices of these SKUs on the screen here, but for comparison, the 4900K as of today comes in at about $450, and the Ryzen 9 9950X comes in at about $700. Intel seems to have brought everyone into the boardroom and said, hey guys, look, what is our core strength, right? It is single and multi-core performance. So let's focus on these and make them better. And while AMD wants to stand out with their new, with their 3D V-Cache for 1080p gaming performance, it looks like Intel wants to stand out with their NPUs and focus more on creator applications. Because if we move into the performance specs for creators, it seems that Intel's focus on AI has been on AI-driven tools in creator applications than gaming. Now, although if and when we see widespread use of AI in gaming, like environment creation or enemy AI or NPC interactions and so on, these NPUs will likely provide higher performance. But this is most likely to be in scenarios where it's, typically single player experiences. But despite having launched the the much more powerful NPU 4 earlier this year, which has significant performance improvements over the NPU 3, Intel has actually integrated the NPU 3 on this on the Arrow Lake 200S for some reason. So if you're someone who uses a PC mainly for creator tools, then from what Intel is stating and what Intel is showing, it looks like these processors seem like great tools to help improve productivity, help you shave off those minutes and save time basically. And if you're okay with the platform uncertainty for now, why don't you look at this, right? But if you are an enthusiast gamer and if power savings and temperatures matter to you, keep a close eye on what's going on with Intel, because this is very important in this space. But if, like me, you're a frugal gamer, then this is simply good to know information on what's up in the CPU space, right? Because I personally still rock a Ryzen 5 5600X with a 3060 Ti with 32 gigs of 3200 megahertz RAM. And generationally, this is about 4 years old, but it still does what I want perfectly well. So let me know what you think in the comments. If you like the video, like the video. If you dislike it and tell me why in the comments. Thanks for watching. Until next time.